and he can win you a game, you got to let him win you a game.
Absolutely.
You have to.
Absolutely.
But ideally, I think you'd like to get into situations where you have the option to use both of those guys multiple times in the course of a series.
Well, ideally, Ryan Prager goes out and gives you 7 more scoreless innings tonight, and that has your bullpen set up for Saturday and Sunday, especially when you got to kind of match your third starter against who has been Florida's best starter in Caglione. But
TexAgs, this is a rewind, March 15th, a Friday edition. Big show today, full of lots of basketball and baseball. The Aggies beat Ole Miss last night. They face Kentucky today. Where do they sit on that ever-changing bubble? Do they need to beat Kentucky? Are they in right now? How much help do they need from the other folks on the bubble? How many bids were stolen? We talked a lot about that with Olin Buchanan to start the show. We then transitioned over to baseball, and I had talked a lot of baseball. Aggies take on Florida this weekend in a top 10 matchup on the road in Gainesville. We talked to Scott Clendenin, Richard Zane. The baseball bunch came in at the 9 o'clock hour, and we also spoke with Nick De La Torre from Gators Online. He's their beat writer, their baseball beat writer, so was able to bounce some things off of him and get his thoughts on the upcoming series. And as always, we welcome in TexAgs co-owner and executive editor Billy Liucci on a Friday to get his thoughts on all things basketball, baseball, Nashville, the whole gambit. Here's the rewind.
You know what I want to see? I want to see the what I'd call the hot streak Wade Taylor that we haven't seen in a while, where he's just making everything. One of those games where he can score 30. Not necessarily want him to score 30, but because they're like 1-5 when he scores 30 or more. But one of those games where he is in that neighborhood where the defense just has to start coming out to check him, which of course opens other things up. But yeah, I want to see hot Wade Taylor again.
I want to see the Aggie pitching staff really make their mark on the road at a red-hot, very talented Florida, against a red-hot, very talented Florida lineup. A lot of folks around the country are saying that this is fool's gold with this pitching staff. I believe the opposite. I think they are very good. I think they have had a complete mentality change, and I'm ready to put my neck out there and say they are an elite pitching staff. Now, what does that look like in the SEC? Jim Schlossnagle has talked a lot about that over the last couple of days, where, last year the national champion LSU Tigers had a team ERA of like around 5 with Paul Skeens on that pitching staff. So what does success look like in this league? And as daunting as the offenses are in this league, you got to kind of have that parameter in your brain. But I want to see this A&M pitching staff go prove a lot of people, a lot of skeptics wrong in Gainesville against a really talented Florida team. But let's start off with last night. 80-71 win. I mentioned those 49 fouls called. It was frenetic, man. It was organized chaos, which I think, and I talked to Logan about this yesterday, Mark, I think this A&M team thrives in that kind of environment. And I think if they're going to beat Kentucky today, they got to kind of muddy it up and make it ugly. But your overall thoughts on last night?
Yeah, no, I watched the game. Again, I've just been so impressed with the emergence of Manny. I think it just does wonders for Boots and Wade. But in terms of, you're talking at the macro level, what does it need to look like and feel like? And I think the whole idea of a backroom brawl or a street fight, and it just, I think we do better as a program when it's not the prettiest. And I think, but when it's, it's kind of like a toughness game where it's, we're going to put our will upon you. Anyways, just kind of alpha male energy versus alpha male energy. I think we kind of thrive in that. And we have a lot of guys that take to that, and it just seems to bring out the best in what we have and who we have. And so I think absolutely, especially with a team like Kentucky, Bronny, I'm telling you, those guys can score. They're one of the better scoring teams I've seen in college basketball since I've been around and been doing this. The guards are really good. But, yeah, in terms of Ole Miss, beating a team back-to-back, especially a Chris Beard team, shows a lot of maturity. I think they deserve credit for that. That's hard. Your season's on the line. You've probably been in a baseball situation like that, playing back-to-back, and, you got to have it. And they went and did it, and I'm proud of them.
It's going to be really interesting to see how Jim Schlossnagle utilizes the bullpen, most specifically Evan Aschenbeck and Shane Sadeo. If he gets into a scenario tonight where he brings Aschenbeck in the 5th, 6th inning, and he can win you a game, you got to let him win you a game.
Absolutely.
You have to.
Absolutely.
But ideally, I think you'd like to get into situations where you have the option to use both of those guys multiple times in the course of a series.
Well, ideally, Ryan Prager goes out and gives you 7 more scoreless innings tonight, and that has your bullpen set up for Saturday and Sunday, especially when you got to kind of match your third starter against who has been Florida's best starter in Caglione. But yeah, absolutely. If you have to use Ashenbeck today to win the ball game, I don't think he'd think twice about it. And if he gets that, depending on his pitch count, he would be able to come back on Sunday. And same thing goes for Sadeo. And obviously, I want to see him bounce back and get back in the groove and still have the confidence he was pitching with before he had that outing against Rhode Island. So I think Coach Schlossnagle has a couple of options he can turn to out of his bullpen if he needs to lock up a Friday night win tonight. And he can also go back to some guys who have shown that they are capable. They just have to do it against really good competition for the first time.
I think Brad Rudis, Josh Stewart, Brock Peary, those are 3 guys where you're looking in the middle of that A&M bullpen and going, they could make or break some of these series, because if they're good, if they're going to pitch the way they have, Scotty, that is first of all, it gets right-handers late. It gives you right-handed options late. But second of all, Brad, Josh, and even Brock's maybe a little bit different, but Brad and Josh can give you some length because they throw strikes.
Well, and No, it does not. And I think we all know they weren't getting in if they lost that game last night. And that doesn't mean they're in by any stretch of the imagination, but we all knew they had to win yesterday. And I was sitting right behind the bench, and you could sense that urgency. And Ole Miss mucked it up. But those are 2 teams that aren't scared. With Buzz Williams and Chris Beard, those 2 coaches will coach and let their teams play a physical brand of basketball. And truth be told, A&M's usually going to win that kind of fight. Whether it's Tennessee, what we saw at Reed, or whether it's at Kentucky, if you let them play that kind of game, A&M's comfortable there. It's why I'm going to be pretty interested in this Mississippi State-Tennessee game here in a little bit, that I'm going to go to another really physical team in Mississippi State. But it was a weird game, wasn't it? It felt like once the first half went by, and there weren't very many fouls called at all in the first half, but once the first half went by, I kind of was getting to a point where I'm going, all right, this is going to be one of those down to the last couple possession games. So, buckle up. The Aggies weren't hitting outside shots, but they were playing hard. And when that's going on against a team like Ole Miss, I thought it was going to be a down to the wire. Next thing you know, Solomon hits a 3, he gets a dunk, and you're sitting here going, okay, this thing's probably, if they don't call Wade Taylor for a foul on that steal he had for the breakaway layup that would have put him up 15, I thought it was that close to being over. But man, that last couple minutes was tough to get through. And the crazy thing is, the Aggies hit so many of their free throws there, thank God. But the team that struggled with that earlier in the year was just burying them pretty much every time up to the line.
All right, if you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. It helps with our algorithm, and we hope you guys have a fantastic weekend full of hopefully a lot of A&M victories. David Nuno will be back with you on Monday to host a show and kick off a new week.